Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we are taking a look at RPG Maker MV. Now this is a very focused game engine. It's all about creating RPGs, specifically JRPG style games. And the reason I'm talking about it is because about a week back there was an RPG Maker Returns bundle on Humble, and I said I would do a hands-on with this game engine. So that's exactly what we're looking at today. First, a quick recap of that bundle. I will link it down below if you're interested in picking it up. You'll notice in the bundle there are a number of different versions of RPG Game Maker and various different assets that you can import from the earlier versions. But the key tier we're looking at is, yes, it's kind of pricey at $50, but considering the full version of RPG Maker is generally about $80 on Steam and you're getting a bunch of content with it, it's still a pretty solid deal if you're interested in this game engine. So what we're going to do in this video is try and show you if you should be interested in this game engine, and we're going to look at some of the DLC content that also comes with this, so get an idea of what these asset packs are all about and how you can use them. All right, so without further ado, let us jump into RPG Game Maker. Here you can see very bare bones, minimalistic user interface to start with. Let's go in here and we will create a new project. Sure, we'll call it Project 3. And you're seeing it's copying over a number of files. This is set from the default template in the RPG Game Maker folder. We'll look at that in just a few minutes. But here you can see the experience you start with. Pretty straightforward. You've got your character in the game world. We'll look at painting in game world in just a second. You can come over here and edit your map. You can set things here like the tile set that's being used. So if we want to use a completely different set of tiles, we could switch it out to a completely new different tile set, outside sci-fi, outside sci-fi, inside, and so on. You can have it scroll off various different sides. You can set which kind of background music you want to play. And so on. Now in this pick are the battle background that you have on by default, but we'll keep things pretty much as they are. You can also set up a number of random encounters in the world, but we'll leave it as it is. You'll see the tile pack just switched out, so I'm now using the sci-fi one. Your tiles are set into different worlds. We'll look at that in just a second, or different categories. We'll look at that in a second, but first I'm going to go ahead and start the game. Click this play button right here, and we'll go ahead and save it. And you'll see the default game world, pretty straightforward. You got this little splash screen kicks up. You can actually configure that. The default title screen, of course, you can configure everything here as well. And we'll go ahead and create a new game. So you're seeing you're getting a very generic default JRPG style template. We've got our 4 characters in the world. We got default controls. I'm using the arrow keys to move them around. Right click to bring up game menu. And then we'll just exit out the game here, like so. And we'll shut that down. So that's what you're getting right off the hop. So pretty straightforward and easy to use. And if you want to go ahead and make that your game, you're done. You can just come up here, you can go File, Deployment, and you'll see here you can deploy it for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, iOS, or for web browsers. The settings are all pretty straightforward no matter which one you go with. And that's really all you got to do. So deploying your game to various different platforms is very, very easy in RPG Maker. So now let's look a little bit about creating the levels. You don't really have layers like you would in a lot of tile maps. You have 3 layers. So you have this first set under A. These are kind of your backgrounds. So we do a default, we can paint in, and we can kind of paint over what we've got going on, like so. We've also got ones with a transparent background like this one, and those will be drawn on top of whatever you draw. And as you can see, there is auto tiling support, so it will automatically create the appropriate corners as it butts into something else. So you see here, you get the right cornering between the tile that was painted over and the tile that was painted into. So that was your default set. We can switch over here now. We've got like world entities, like so. So if we want to drop a casino sign here, we can do so. And we got trees and storefronts and so on. And then over here, we've got more building sets. So if we wanted to have this Gothic looking tower, we can drag and drop multiples and just place them into the world. So now when we go ahead and play using the defaults from those tile sets, we'll look at this and how to customize it later on. But using those default tile sets, now when we have our player walking around in the world, we can walk into certain things and not others. So those base background ones by default will be walk over, so all of our landscape we can walk into, but the other stuff is getting in our way. So as I try to walk into it, boom. Whereas this one is a background tile. And that's kind of the extent of it. You basically paint out your layers, you create your maps very simply, and then you're kind of done. The final one here we've got is doing for marking regions. So this is for programmability. You could mark a certain area. So say, example, I want to say that this is an area where certain encounters can happen. I can mark it that way. Or I could use it to designate a switch like so, and then I could go ahead and we'll say right click that switch. So we'll switch here into edit modes or event mode, and we'll click here, and now you see I can do quick events like, for example, a transfer. So when I walk into that guy, we will move, and I'll just say let's move to the bottom left corner of our map like so. And then when we play it, if we walk into that space, that event will fire. Don't worry, we'll look at events in more detail in a second, because events are essentially how you do your programming when you're using RPG Game Maker. So here we go, and then boom, and that triggers off that event. Pretty straightforward and clean so far. So if we want, we can come back here. So we're in event mode. I should be able to click it. We'll do edit. And here you can see the different events you can do. You can do a string of things on the condition of there. We're going to transfer the player down. So if the player hits this location, transfers to there. We can come down here. We can add a new event in. And here you can see a number of options. And this is, again, your game logic is here. So you can do basic loops if you want. You could change the name. You can change the actor out, change the amount of gold they have, or do a spell effect. You could pop up some text, or you could do a choice for them. Come over here. You could, again, transfer players, the one we already did. We could transfer them to a vehicle. We can change transparency, change out pictures. We can do audio videos. We could play a special effect when we want to do the move. So for example, if we did play special effects right after that move happens, we'll play the bell like this, and then what'll happen basically is we'll move the player, and then boom, we play the bell. So basically these event sheets is your programming logic. Now you've actually got the ability to go ahead and create plugins as well that you can send messages into and out of, and those plugins are created using JavaScript in this particular version, but we're not going to deal with that right now. You've also got the ability to set switches and variables that can be interacted with across your logic, and then some of these events actually have the ability to set variables, check values of variables, and so on. And then, like I mentioned earlier on, you can call out to a plugin, or you can actually even do inline JavaScript scripts if you want to just directly invoke JavaScript right there. You can. So that's kind of your programming logic. It's a pretty straightforward process, and you've got various different triggers you can trigger off of. So auto run, parallel, event touch, player touch, and action buttons, performance. Those are the things that fire off this particular event. And then you saw how the event process works. So it's not a hard way to program by any means. We'll exit out of there, but that is essentially the way programming is done. You got some pretty straightforward drawing commands up here. So go back into drawing mode. You've got flood fill. So if you've got a bunch of things you want to draw with a single tile, like so, and then I could go here to flood fill mode, and then boom, we can paint in very quickly. We've got this guy here. Now it's got excruciatingly slow tooltips, but this one is basically just for setting a shadow layer. So if you've got a building that's giving off a shadow that you want to have the character walk under, or have it show as shadows, it's done that way. But that's kind of the crux of it, to be honest. It's a pretty straightforward process here. Now, the logic of your game, though, that's mostly all done here. And this is going to get a little daunting. This is the database. So this is where the heart of your game's logic is done. So here we've got the 4 actors in our game. So if we want to switch that out, so we only had the 1 actor, we can do so. And here you can see it's Harold. And Harold is a hero. We've got a portrait for it. We could go ahead and change that out if we so wish. So let's make Harold look evil, like so. We can change out the character sprites. We'll go with the evil again, like so. So now we've got a different character, and then we can change out the character battling sprites. Again, it's a little harder to figure that one out, or I might have to create one. Now, we can create actors very simply, so this isn't going to make a lot of sense, but that's our battle thing here. We can add traits to this character, so you see things like attack skills, equipment, rate of healing. We get to put them so that they debuff or have special abilities that way. And then speaking of that, we've also got the initial equipment that we can string out for things. But now let's go on. So that is a hero. Now a hero is a class, and a class has skills. And you can see all these things kind of slate together. So the traits aren't really going to be used that much for a top level actor, but you're going to see here under classes, there are a number of different traits. So they've got the trait of being able to equip armor, of general, light, and small shields, and so on. So this is where you would give abilities to the character classes you define. So if you wanted to create your own character class, just come on down here, and we'll create 5, and we'll call this guy, say, oops, I got to switch to it. Say, let's go over here, 5, and we call it an assassin. Oops, that's really annoying. Don't hit enter. It closes the entire thing down. All right, so there's assassin. We could change it the way the experience is recorded, the maximum things for the various different stats here. Then we can start giving it skills. So you see here, we've got the various different skills such as attack, weight, heal, and so on. So our assassin has the ability to heal things. We can add, again, traits to go along with it. And you'll notice then once again, we can create new skills. So come down here, change the maximum skills to 11. And let's give this guy the ability to assassinate. So we've got, oh, okay, I will never stop doing that, and it never stops getting annoying, by the way. So we created assassination. We'll go ahead and give it an icon to represent it. So here, we'll go with this bow and arrow shot here. Kill stuff. No magic cost. This is a, yeah, we'll call it a magic skill. One enemy, always, invocation. So what I'm going to do, it always hits. It has the animation of slash fire. And I could say does assassination. So you can change out so it has a required weapon, and we could give it some damage. So it does hit point damage of physical, and it does 600 of them. And I did it again, and I will never stop doing that. But there you see how you basically can define a skill for it. And this could be anything. So if you want to adapt this to a modern game, you could have this as shoot bullets. You come up here and you can create the classes as, you know, soldier, combat medic, whatever. And then now that we've got a new skill here, we can come back here and we could go ahead and set it to assassinate. So here you can see how you start building together your logic of your game. And then here we've got one more, and we could go ahead and change this guy out to be an assassin. And that is how you, you know, create a skill that you use in classes, that you use in actors. In some ways, these are actually almost inverted to where they should be. And then the same logic here, how you can create various items, weapons, armors. We've got the ability to create enemies. They have images that you can see in effect there. We can create troops. And so this is basically selection. So this is 2 bats, for example. Here's like a minotaur. Select it, and you see the graphic for it there. You can change the background. You can even, once you've created your, so you created your enemy here. So there's where the monitor was defined. See, given it hit points, we gave it traits, we gave it attack abilities, and so on. So you can define how enemies will work, and then you can organize them basically into counters. And then once you're liking what you saw, you can actually go ahead and test it. So here we are with our Herald, and go ahead and do a battle test. And there is the game battle. So we've got Herald here. We're going to go ahead and attack our Minotaur. And it took a small amount of damage. We took a small amount of damage. So now instead what I'm going to do is use my magical assassination attack to the Minotaur. And you see there, it does assassination. And the Minotaur should be pretty much dead because that should do a lot of damage. Let's try that one more time. Yeah, so we'll assassinate the 622, and it is dead. So there you can see you can test combat right away, pretty easy to do. Here you can do the various different states, or these are like attributes applied to characters, so things like poisoned, or on lava, or mad, or immortal, and so on. You can create them there. You can do animations, and you can test them against this guy over here. So remember when earlier we did that physical fire effect? Well, this is that physical fire effect. You can see it's multiple frames of animation. There, you're basically defining those frames. You can see them previewed down here, and you can just play the test right there. So this is where you can basically test your effects. Over here, we've got the tile sets where you can define various different tile sets. We'll come back here in just a second, but this is where you're setting up this A, B, and C thing. So remember earlier on when we were in the level, I could choose from the 5 different tile sets. Well, we can actually create some more, and I'll show you this once we imported some assets in. So we'll come back to that in a second. We can do some common events. So these are events that we define, kind of break up, kind of think about it as reusable code, I suppose you could say. Here is where you're doing your system level stuff. So this is where you're controlling pretty much your game. So you got your starting party here. So since we're just a single player character party now, we'll get rid of all that and change your name, change out the vehicles that are in the game, you can change out the window color. If you prefer to have side view battles instead of top view, you can switch that out there. And I think that will apply immediately. So if we come back here and do a battle test, I think, we'll find out in just a sec. No, it doesn't. Oh yeah, it does. So it does a side view attack instead of the bottom attack. So you can switch those things out right there. So that's back here under system. Yeah. And then various different types that you define. So everything that we saw that we were working with earlier on, like the different physical elements and so on, you can create your own. So if you want to completely redefine everything, so instead your RPG game used laser beams and bullets and so on, you can define all those things, no problem. You can define your own armor types, equipment types, and everything. And then you got terminology. So if you don't want to go with the name of levels, you can change them out. If you don't like the way that, actually I'm not 100% certain, the attributes can be changed. Yeah, so your attributes actually could be changed out. So if you wanted dexterity instead of agility, but you can't change the amount of them. So your parameters, you're defined with this many, but you can actually go ahead and rename them to something that makes more sense to your type of game, and you rename the most common attributes. So as long as your game basically fits in the basic framework that is defined here, you've got a kind of a staggering amount of control over the database process. But as you see, you're going to have to define a lot of things. You're going to have to define your items before they can be used by your characters, your skills before classes can be defined, before characters can be defined, and so on. But the process is all quite straightforward. Now, I mentioned earlier on that this comes with about DLC content, and let's look at exactly how that process works. So in terms of DLC, you'll see that it comes with scene builder, window builder, and tile set builder. Now those are correspond to Mad, Second, and Genie. In terms of what they're all about, scene builder is you can import your project and you can basically set up like cutscenes that you can use on the other end. So let's go up here. We'll go open my project. So there's the game we were working on. Actually, let's make sure that was right. Okay, project 3. All right, so it automatically opened it up. Down here, we've got a timeline that we were working with. So we can add a track in our timeline. So let's create a new track. New track. And I could go ahead and start with, see, it's a little glitchy. I would have expected it to start showing up before I started creating something, but there you go. So I can do things like have a dialogue that comes in here, and then across the timeline, we can decide how long it will go for. Now this one is actually driven by the user's input. So you click to go to the next event. That's why the timeline's not continuing on. But with that defined, for example, I can come up here and we can select the character face here, and then wahahaha, I'm gonna kill you, sucker, for example. And we can change how the background looks, the position that appears at. Your typical JRPG style kind of conversation thing. And we could follow that up with another one. Okay, in the wrong order. So let's do this in opposite order. Who are you? And we could have a different character face come in here, like that. And then you can press you can preview your timeline, then click, and then wahaha, I'm gonna kill you, sucker. And then we can just kind of keep going. We can do things like some special effects to the scene. So we can have it, let's see, we're gonna come up here, we're gonna do some music. So this is starts playing some background music, like so. Let's play the Castle 2 soundtrack when that comes in. And then after this guy clicks, we're gonna go ahead and do a mute of the music. So we'll move that to the end of this track. So let's go back over here. And then we can have this turn off the background music after that dialogue ended, like so. And then we could show a picture or some scrolling text. So we could drop a picture in here. I don't think our project's gonna have a picture by default, so I can't actually show you this until I drop something in there. But then you can have an image display and have control over how it shows up. And then you're basically creating this timeline of events that you can then export back out to your game. So that is the one plugin. It's for making basically cutscenes and dialogues and so on easily. So you get that as one piece of plugin. The other one is a window builder. This one's pretty straightforward. So all the windows you see by default when you're playing your game, your talking window, your status window, your battle window, and so on. So status, for example, is huge. We can go ahead, we can theme it. So we can set the corners, how things look, the backgrounds, and so on. So you can basically configure how your various different windows look and your corners of those windows look, and then you just basically save it back, and that will theme out in your application how your windows look. And then finally, we have tile set builder. And you can use this to create tiles, which is pretty cool. You can create compound tiles from using existing ones. So we can pull in that tile, and then you see here you've got the ability to change tile size, to draw on the tiles, and then you can save them back out. You can even actually create animated tiles here, and you basically using your drawing tools to come in here with your palette and create the tiles you want, and then you can export the tiles back out for being used. So save you from having to use your art program and import it separately. So you got this built-in tile editing tool, and we'll shut that down. So those are the three major runnable tools you get in here. You also see they can be controlled down here from the toolbar. By the way, if you've installed this and they don't show up by default for you after, go to this RPG Maker Tools section, come down here to Select Path, go into RPG Maker under Steam, and just locate the Tools folder. like so, and then pick one of these directors, say select folder. It will show up down here, click it, and then say add, and it will show up here. In one of my installs, they installed automatically. On this computer, I had to install them manually. On top of that, you have a bunch of DLC available to you. You can get to that via, go to the resource manager here, and you're gonna see you've got a number of different settings. And when we go to our project, so I need to close that down. So we can get into our project, go into game, open folder. And you'll see our folder is made, we've got the various different directories here, so audio, data, fonts, so on. What we can do is actually come back to what we were looking at there. So again, resource manager, and we can go, say, image tile sets, for example. And you see here are the available tile sets that we've got right now, all right? And now what I can do is say DLC, and here is where your DLC is installed. By the way, you'll notice it's just under your RPG Maker install folder in the DLC folder. Now let's say, for example, I want to bring in the Ancient Dungeon base pack. You'll see here we got tile sets, and then we can pick the ones that we don't already have. Just go ahead, select them all, and say open. And those will all show up down here. So like that, and then we just do an import. Okay, I did that wrong. So we do the import and bring them in. And so that's how you bring in your DLC content. So that's where your DLC is available from. So you want to bring it in, again, just come in here, locate it, import it, and then you are good to go. So now that will be in your tile set. You'll have all of those tiles that we just imported available right there. So if you want to check something out, you can preview it and see the end results there. So that's how you can bring content in. The same thing for background music. So if we come here and go to audio BGM, I can go ahead and go import. And some of this content is sounds, I think, classic fantasy. Yeah, so here we go. We can go into either the OGG Vorbis or M4As and just literally just import them that way. And so if we want to bring in all these guys, just go ahead and say, okay. And now you will see we have additional audio available that we can use for background music. And it goes on for all of these different things, the faces, the characters, and so on. They can all be imported from the content accordingly. So that is how you bring in your DLC content. So now we can go back here to the database manager, and you'll notice we had this tile set option. I could go ahead and create a new one. So let's jack that up to 7. So here, and we'll call this Mike's Tiles. It can be area or world tiles. And then we just basically start defining which ones we want. So the ones that we just imported, you can see here. So we're defining an A1. These are locations. So A1 are animated in this category, A2 ground, and then building tiles, walls, and normal. So if it has a corresponding in the tile set you just imported, so here we go, tile A1, tile A1. So we'll just go ahead and bring those in. So those are all your animated tiles. And now with those tiles defined, you could say if you want to be able to walk into them or not. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for that one. Tile A2 interior, so we got our floors, and then buildings are the tile A3s, and so on. Of course, you could create your own tiles. We don't have any A3s in that case, so there's no buildings inside. And then we got our walls, so tile A4 interior, like so, and then A5 normal. We could just go ahead and bring in tile A5 interior. There you go. So we just created our own tile set, and we keep adding tiles to it. So tile B interior. And that's my B tab, and I can go ahead and create a C tab and a D tab. And I don't have to bring them all in from the same one. So if I want to bring in the C tab for some reason I want world tiles there, and D I want from a different pack. Let's see, find a D. It doesn't really matter. So this one, I'll use these ones here, and so on. You can just pick whatever tiles you want. So you got various different collections, and now you notice you got all these different categories here. And then when you're defining something, so for example, with this mountain range, see how it's got the clicks there? I can define if you can pass through it or not. So by clicking it, I think I'm saying no. But we can also do a 4-way pass, so we can determine which directions you would come in from. You can also flag things as being a bush or a ladder, counter, a damaging floor, so it actually does damage if you want. You can tag it as terrain. And that's kind of the extent of how you bring in your particular tile. So once you've got your tiles up and going, I'll show you create a new map. So file, let's create a brand new map. And you'll notice we could pick our tile sets, our brand new tile sets there. And we'll call this Mike's map. And you could do your background. You could actually set it as parallax too, so you could have it transparent and then put a parallax background of some kind in. So for example, if you wanted mountains or skies in the background, we could start with the sky. Yeah, so that'll work. All right, so we'll go with the default. So there we go, got our background in there. And we can start painting, so we could put some of these tiles down here if we so wished, and so on. Pretty straightforward. By the way, there's also, did I show flood fill tools or not? I'm not sure, but we want to change that guy out. You can come in and flood fill completely. Not really what I meant to do, but that is kind of how she works. So yeah, that pretty straightforward on the whole. On the same time, we can come back here. Let's go to back to edit mode, and we could do something like quick here. So we could do this one as an event. So we do a quick event here. We'll do this as a transfer, and we can actually have it transfer to other maps. So we'll go here, we'll go ahead and run this scene, save it, and give it a second. I'll get back to this guy in just 1 second. So new game, and we'll go straight up, and boom, I did something wrong, but that should have transitioned to the other map. Let me just see what I did wrong there. Transfer to map 1. What did I call it? Mike's map. Okay, I did that wrong. I don't know why I did that wrong, but... Oh, I didn't pick a square. My bad. All right, so there you go. And that will cause him to switch between maps. So that's how you would do your transitions between different scenes and start building your game logic together. Pretty straightforward and clean on the whole. Now, I mentioned a second ago about the one thing I was going to get back to. That's your plugins. So that splash screen there, you see made with MV, you can go ahead and turn that off if you so wish. Now, plugins are a way of expanding your game. These are written in JavaScript. So if we go back here and look at our project settings, you can see in the JVS folder, we've got main.js, and this one, we got various different, plugins. So you'll see here, we've got made with M right there. Very straightforward. So we'll open that up for a second. So let's open that guy up, Visual Studio Code. You see, it's just straightforward JavaScript code. There's a lot of things for like talking in comment form so that it knows parameters and so on that are going to be passed in. But you can see that code to display the splash screen, it's just straight up JavaScript code. So if you want to write your own plugins, they're pretty straightforward and clean to do. And as you see, we've got several different plugins here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of the box. And there's a ton on the internet, by the way. You can come back here and go edit. And this is very unintuitive. So it's actually here, you click the empty row here, and you can do an edit, and then you can pick any of the other stuff that's loaded there. So if we want to bring in this weapon skill plugin, we can do so. Or alternative save game screen if we want, we can do so. Another thing to notice is with certain ones, you can actually pass parameters in if they are defined. So remember we saw at the top of the comments, it was set up to take parameters. You've also got the ability to call out to plugins and send messages using events. So if you want to do advanced logic for your game, you can do so using the plugin interface. And yeah, it actually creates a programming setup that makes life fairly easy for people. Now, the only final thing to really talk about here is probably... Oh, didn't mean to do resource manager. What I went to do was character generator. Really bad. All right, tools, character generation. And this is where you saw, so we saw all those different character sprites earlier on. We can actually come in here and using various different pieces. So for example, this guy has no face. We can come in here, we can change out his eyebrows. We can give him a nose. We can give him a mouth. And you're seeing the characters being updated on the fly. We can change out the skin color. We can change out the ears, give it pointy elf ears. We can give him a beard, and so on. And you can basically create characters here. And you're seeing it's creating the character sprites, the battling sprites, and the portrait sprite for you. And then you can basically just export these guys out. We can also switch out the face images. Now, some of the things that we've got were generators. So if you come on back over here, you'll notice, let me just see, Battle Girl character. No, that character. Yeah, so that'd be character. Here we go, heroine character generator. There's other generators in here as well. All right, so there's at least this one generator here. There's another generator in this pack. It might have been earlier up in the pack. And these ones have kind of additional installations, requirements to bring. Oops, I clicked the wrong one. Where did you go? There we go. To bring in, so you can do additional types and setups, but the import process is a little sloppier, so we're not going to get into that right now. But you do have additional options, so if you want to move beyond what you can do with this guy, that's part of the DLC content as well. But as you see, just from flipping through the randomizer, you can create some pretty good and some pretty terrible results as a result. Like when it's trying to mix in bestial characters, it just looks bad. But you can create character sprites really quickly, and you actually got a fair amount of customization about what you can do with them. So if you want to create Harry Potter, you can create Harry Potter very, very easily. And that's kind of it, really. You've got a lot of control over it. Now, you're stuck with the JRPG art style, and you would have to create all kinds of things yourself to come out of this. But you're seeing it is setting up a ton of stuff for you. So if you don't want to get into the artwork side of things, it does a lot of the work for you. You see, we got male, we've got female. And again, you can create a very diverse range of JRPG style characters, or of course you can just go from scratch and create them entirely yourself, like so. And that's the character generator. Save that out. You've got another sprite you can work with, and then you can go on in here, database, and you can use that for the actor portraits if you so wished, the character portraits, and the battler. Ditto for, I believe, enemies can be hooked up this way. Oh no, enemies are straight out images. So that is kind of it in a nutshell, really. RPG Maker is a very focused tool. These are just basically corresponding to most of these settings right here. So you're just basically seeing duplication. You can zoom in and out of your map. Why are you not using my mouse? Now here you can see, you can zoom in, you can zoom out. You test your game this way. The rest of your tools are pretty much everything you see here is all that you see up here. You can do this guy to get over to your game. You saw it, we've been playtesting all along as we've gone. And then finally, you can once again deploy your game out this way. And you've got the various different platforms you can hit for. So for example, if I wanted to create a web game, I can do so. We'll dump this guy out to c:/temp. I don't know if it'll create a folder for me automatically. RPG web. Yeah, it did. Okay, so there we created an export. So come here, so you see RPG web. It's creating us our web version of this. It's going to take a second. Okay, it's done. So now I'm just going to come down here. We'll drop a command prompt, cd/temp/RPG web. And we'll go into project 3. And we'll see www. So there you see, there is a package that's ready to deploy to your web server. So for example, I have Node installed. So let's start hosting this directory. 192.168.30. All right. So let's come up here. And 192.168.0.30. Oh wait, that was 8080. My bad. 192.168.0.30:8080. Oh yeah, this is really irritating. I don't know why Node server doesn't automatically pick up the index. And I can't type today. There we go. So you see, we'll hit it, and there's the exact same game, but instead running in a browser. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's RPG Maker in a nutshell. If you don't like JRPG style games, this is not the engine for you because you can't get out of that mold. You're going to have to do a lot of work to make it so that people don't realize you were working with an RPG Maker game. But truth of the matter is, there have been a number of successful commercial games made in this style, and people just accept it. It's a well-established genre, I suppose. It's not really to my taste personally, but this is really one of the few game-making tools out there that is actually what it says on the tin. You can learn this guy in an afternoon and start making games regardless to your programming levels. And then as your programming abilities get better, obviously you'll be able to take better advantage of this event system. So you want to switch over here into event mode. This kind of is programming, and you start getting into more and more complex event sheets. The amount that you can do here, it's pretty solid. There's quite a bit of control here. And then once again, you can drop out inline scripts if you so wish, or you can actually have it run out to a plugin. Yeah, I guess that's it. That is RPG Maker MV. I guess, this is, I think, why Pixel Game Maker MV frustrated me so much. If Pixel Game Maker was this, but to 2D and shoot 'em up games, that would have been wonderful. But this has an intuitive and straightforward and understandable user interface. Pixel Game Maker does not. And only place that really kind of sucks on this guy is the DLC management. I find this whole process, the user interface here, the process of bringing DLC in and copying it over, I find it a little convoluted and frustrating. And then one other thing I'm supposed to be aware of before we move on, if you are curious, if you installed it from Steam, it will be in your Steam apps, like so. RPG Game Maker, and you'll find all of the content is down under DLC. But what you'll also find, so we can actually take the content out of here. So example, if I wanted these tile sets, we could take all of these tile sets out of here, and I can actually drop them into, if we go to the root folder here, there is a new data right here. This is actually the template for when a new game is created. So for example, I could come in here and then drop all those tiles in. And then when I come back here and I say create file, new project, all new projects from now on are going to have that additional content. So if there's a bunch of DLC that you like the content from, you can actually bring it from there into here and have it work. And so once it's in new data, basically that creates a new template and you're good to go. At the same time, you could also do this by basically copying the content from over here that you want directly into your project folder. So I could do it by going, let's see, game, open folder. So I could start bringing it across from here to here, and we can deploy it that way, bypassing the resource manager. But again, I just find there's a lot, this is a bit of a learning curve jump that once you start wanting to bring in this additional content that you got from DLC packs, it gets a little sloppy. Same way that once you got to come in and start setting up the tile sets, this is a little bit more work than I would like to see. It's powerful though. It does have the ability to define quite a bit of details of the tiles, but it's not the most intuitive thing ever. And to a certain degree, neither are A, B, and C, and neither is the way that tile layers work. But that's kind of pretty small stuff. And the weirdest thing is, there isn't a really nice delete. I can't believe there's not a delete mode. So you basically got to come in and right-click and then delete, right-click, delete, right-click, delete. But that's kind of a small complaint on the whole. The documentation is okay. It's pretty easy to get up and going. The programming side of things, if you want to go ahead and start writing those plugins, that part's a little bit crap. There's community documentation, but the stuff from Degica, or in this case, that's the publisher. So anyways, the documentation from them, it's a little lacking for the programming side of things, but the community has done a pretty good job of filling in. And if you're a JavaScript developer, the back end here is Pixie.js. Anyways, that is it. That is RPG Maker MV and the content you get with it. As I said, it's part of this Humble Bundle. This Humble Bundle is running for another 9 days. So if you're interested in picking it up, so you'll have 9 days as of tomorrow when I publish this. Most of the earlier stuff is useless to you. Some of these things you could bring in, these resource packs, it's mostly just graphics. So obviously all of those things can be brought in. But what we're looking at here, unfortunately, is at the $50 tier. And that seems really steep. But again, compared to just the price of RPG Game Maker MV on Steam, it's actually, if you're interested in grabbing it, this is about the best deal you're going to see. So if that was interesting to you, hopefully at least a handful of you found that interesting. Again, it's not my genre or style, so that's why I'm not going much further into it. But if I was just starting out and this was my jam, this is the stuff that I was into, this program would be a godsend because it comes with all the content you need, especially with the DLC packs. And you don't really need to know a ton to get in there and start being successful. And any kind of a game engine that rewards experimentation and early success is a good one. And it's actually kind of hard to screw up your game massively in this case. So other than, some of the resource management, it's a pretty solid recommendation on my end. Of course, if you like JRPGs. If you don't, this one ain't for you. All right, that's it. I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.